Rev up your engines! Well, here we go. California has plans to scrap gasoline and diesel cars over the next 13 years to get them off the road. Now, I was in Texas when they were doing that buyback clunkers program, and that was a massive failure. All it did was give you a tiny amount of money if you scrapped your car, and it wasn't even money to you. It was money to the car manufacturers because you had to buy a brand new car, and you got a credit of God knows what. If a car was 50 grand, maybe you got 5 grand back. Wasn't that big of a deal. It was more smoke and mirrors putting on a dog and pony show to make it look like they're doing something when they really weren't. You know, they're saying now, well, you can't even sell new gasoline cars by 2035. And so they're trying to get rid of the gasoline ones between now and then by having programs where they scrap the old cars. And as I said many times, where's the magic electricity that powers these battery electric cars coming from? I don't know. You know, they're all fighting. Well, they don't want nukes. They don't want nuclear power plants, even though they're the most efficient thing, right? I mean, this electricity is going to fall out of the sky and charge all their cars. You know, that's not happening anytime soon. And even the extreme green scientists admit that switching to battery electric cars cannot happen fast enough and efficient enough to stop climate change, because it's not much less polluting than gasoline when it comes into building them, charging the batteries up. It's only a small percentage saving, and it isn't going to save the planet, according to the scientists who say, hey, that's too little, too late to try to even switch to battery electric cars. They're probably right, too. I mean, it's now massive saving. It costs tons of energy to get the lithium, and that pollutes the water supply, and then most of them run on coal-fired plants, and it's just the one that the local politicians have grabbed on now, and they follow the crowd. They jumped on the electric bandwagon, but you know, when the electric bandwagon wheels fall off or it burns down to the ground because the batteries start on fire, then they'll have to find a new bandwagon to jump on. And their plan in California is to have 250,000 charging stations in the next 3 years by 2025, right? Where's the electricity coming from that runs these stations? Do they talk about that? No. It's like the elephant in the room that no one dares talk about. Well, where's the electricity coming from? We're getting brownouts all over the country. Now all of a sudden, we're going to put all these extra charging stations. Where's that electricity coming from? They never even asked that question. Oh, we're going to build a whole bunch of them. That'll solve the problem. No, it won't. It won't solve any problem. It always kind of amazes me, the hypocrisy in a lot of stuff, because take New York City, London, right? I know people that live in both cities, and they always say, oh, you don't need a car. Nobody has a car here. How come every time I go to New York or London, the streets are full of cars? They're parked everywhere, right? Especially the New Yorkers. Yeah, you need a car in the city. Well, then how come there's so many cars in New York City? It's full of cars. Go there, count them. You believe me, there's tons of them. Yeah, I guess people get a myth and they just keep perpetuating it, and then they think it's real, but it isn't. Anira Honey says, I got a 2018 Honda Civic. It cranks, but it won't start. Suddenly my car won't start. It cranks, but the engine won't start. According to Kelley Blue Book, there's an active recall for something in the fuel pump system, but when I put my VIN in, it said my car wasn't affected. What can I do? It's a Honda. They normally don't break that fast. What you want to do is watch my video, Fixing a Car That Cranks But Doesn't Start Up. That'll show you every possible thing you can check. And the easiest thing you can do first is take the air filter out. Get a can of starting fluid, spray it, have somebody crank the engine, spray it into the engine after you take the air filter out, right there. If it starts and dies, you're not getting any fuel. Now, there are theoretically a few reasons that can do that, but most of the time it means the fuel pump's crapped out. And from my experience, when there's a recall for that type of car, for the fuel pump, but yours isn't included, it's usually the same problem. The manufacturers want to hide it, and they're not going to say, yeah, gee, we use that fuel pump on all these cars. They lie and say, well, it was only that model, not these other models, so we're not going to recall that. Happens all the time, especially with Hondas. I've seen Hondas with identical engines. One of them, they'll have to replace the engine free, and the other they won't, even though they're the same exact engine in both cars, because they only want it to cover certain models, so they don't have to spend so much money to fix their problems when they made it. So take out the air filter, spray starting fluid. If it starts, odds are it's the fuel pump, and then complain to Honda and say, hey, you got this fuel pump problem, this one's not working, you're fixing it free. If not, well, pay for a fuel pump then. Future Southern Cal Escapee says, I'm switching Toyota's plastic oil filter housing to an aluminum one on a RAV4. Have you done this before? It's a 2020 RAV4. Some people say they fit, some people say they don't. What can I do? All right, well, I have a video on that. The company that made it made excellent ones, and they worked fine. And my son got one and put it on his wife's RAV4, and it worked perfectly fine. That particular company does a good job. And then it just bolts off, bolts on. You'll have no problems at all. You notice they've gone away from those plastic canisters. Now, everybody complains so much. They get old, they get brittle, they break, they don't come off. It's a stupid idea. And it was all, oh, we're saving the world. Instead of having the spin-off oil filter with metal and paper, you just have the paper. Come on, the paper's all polluted too. It creates the same amount of pollution, except for the metal outside part that they can easily recycle. So the recycling part, the metal part, they got rid of it. Now it's just the paper that you got to throw away that's polluted. So it didn't really save anything. And then they broke and stuck. It was a really stupid idea. I got that video. Why I hate plastic oil filter housings. Watch it. You'll see why I hate it. It's ridiculous. It's a stupid design. Thank goodness most companies are going away from that now. They're realizing it was a giant mistake, and so they're not doing it anymore. The spin-on ones are so easy to recycle because the metal can be recycled. They generally burn them and then use the metal over. That's pretty much what they do with the other ones. They got to burn the paper and oil anyways. They got to get rid of it somehow. It just doesn't have the metal part, and the metal part's easy to recycle. FJK says, is there a safe way to clean the inside of an engine? I got an '07 Toyota FJ Cruiser. For medical issues and other, I didn't change the oil over 10,000 miles with no oil change. I found sludge and I want it cleaned. How can I clean it? All right, well, you can't beat my friend Bernie in Albuquerque, ATS. He sells a cleaner. You pour it in the engine oil before you change the oil. You rev it up to like 1,800 RPM for 20 minutes. Then you turn it off, change the oil filter. All that sludge will be gone. It's phenomenal. There's lots of flushes out there that'll do an okay job, but his does the best. He figured out how to get all that stuff out. They're geniuses with the chemicals they have. You get the one for oil. He's got one for fuel and one for oil. You get the oil one, just pour it in the oil, run it and drain it, and it'll all come out. All the crud will come out. When you change the oil, you see all the black crud will come right out and drain itself out. It puts it in solution, gets it off all the metal parts. It's phenomenal stuff. ATS, Bernie in Albuquerque. Google that, you'll find it. It's out there. Brenda once says, I think I have a bad remanufactured alternator. Got an '07 Honda Pilot. Bought a new battery 3 weeks ago, and I put a remanufactured alternator from AutoZone. Under load, it only charges the battery 13.6 to 13.8. It should charge 14.2 to 14.6. Is it common for them not to be good? It's very common out of the boxes. Look where they're remanufactured. Most of them now are in Mexico where they do crappy jobs. On the other hand, 13.6 to 13.8 volts is not that bad. Here's what you have to understand. You bought a new battery. That's a fully charged battery. Often with a fully charged battery, it's only going to charge 13.6, 13.8 when you test it. 14.2 to 14.6 is going to be charging up a battery that's a weak battery. A new one, you need to charge less because it's already got a lot of charge in it. My advice is find a guy like me with good equipment. We have equipment that in 2 minutes, test the alternator, the diode ripple, amperage, the voltage, test everything. And if it says it's good, just live with it. I mean, they do go bad all the time, these remanufactured ones. They don't do such a job. But don't go just by that voltage. That could be fooling you. If the amperage is fine, there's no diode ripple, that's plenty enough to make the car go. Have it tested by a guy like me. If he says it's okay, live with it. If not, yeah, go get a new one instead of a remanufactured. Andrew V says, where can I buy a replacement engine? I need a replacement engine for my V6 engine in an '05 Mitsubishi Galant. I'm not sure where I can buy a new engine that's trustworthy. Okay, well, here's your problem. You got a Mitsubishi. Mitsubishis are poorly made engines. They never made piston rings right. They burn oil, they blow up, and it's a 2005 Mitsubishi. So you're going to have to get an engine that is, you know, an 18-year-old engine or close. You got to use a similar year. They're always changing it, right? So if you buy a used one, absolute gamble. They're crappy engines to begin with. If you're going to buy a rebuilt one, most guys don't know how to rebuild those things correctly. They'll give you a year guarantee, a 6-month guarantee. You're going to spend so much money. It will make your head spin. That's the problem. Now, if you know an actual rebuilder that knows how to rebuild engines, say a guy that does race engines and he's willing to work on that Mitsubishi V6, have him at it if you don't mind spending a whole bunch of money. But you probably find you're going to spend more money than the vehicle's worth doing it correctly. That's just how it goes these days. If you're a riverboat gambler, go ahead and try a used one from a junkyard. But like I say, they're weak engines to begin with. You're buying an engine that's, 10 to 15, 18 years old, probably all worn out too. That's the problem with engines. That's why you want to change your oil a lot. When an engine goes out, a lot of times you're better off just saying, forget the car and get something else. Mitsubishi, I wouldn't mess with used engines. They're too weak to begin with. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.